Starting with the recommended way of installing WordPress through your host provider as your first option, there's something you need to do before you jump into the install process itself, and that's to choose the right web host. I'm starting here because it would just be wrong if I didn't talk about selecting a host provider before you do anything. This one step can make all the difference in both installation and performance of your website. And that's because not all host providers are the same, which is especially true when it comes to WordPress. Believe me, I've made this mistake before using a cheaper but not recommended host, and it was the worst experience I've ever had with running a website. It's not hard to select the right host. There's just a few things you need to look out for, and if you do, you should be fine. Alright, so for starters, the host must be able to run PHP on their servers for WordPress to function. Many hosts offer different programming languages as options to their customers, and nearly all of them can install PHP. The problem is a lot of first-time website owners have no idea what these options mean. To help you, many if not most host providers will now ask you if you plan to use WordPress when you sign up for a plan. Yes, WordPress is that popular. This way, they can make sure both the server and database are ready for you when you install WordPress. In fact, once you say you plan to use WordPress, most host providers will now take you directly to the WordPress setup process so you don't need to search for it, which is pretty convenient. The second thing about host providers that makes them different is that not all hosts are optimized for running WordPress. WordPress is huge and fairly complex as a platform. This means there are a lot of PHP calls, loading of various style sheets, JavaScript, and once you start adding themes and plugins, it only gets more complicated. For that reason alone, you need to make sure you're choosing a host and a plan that can handle the amount of resources WordPress is going to take up. Hosts that offer, quote, unlimited data and, quote, unlimited bandwidth are a must in my opinion. And if you're wise, you'll follow the recommendations of WordPress themselves for hosts. Now, many would disagree with me on this, and I understand why. But for the novice who has never done this before, this will help eliminate many headaches you might encounter. Here are the top 3 hosts WordPress recommends, and no, I have no affiliation or stake in any of them: Bluehost, DreamHost, and SiteGround. It's up to you who you choose as your host provider, and maybe you already have a host. But all 3 of the listed providers above, according to WordPress themselves, make WordPress easy to install, are optimized for WordPress, and will hopefully save you from too many problems. There's always going to be issues. I just tend to try to mitigate risk as much as possible. I don't have time for that. I bet you don't either. Now that that's out of the way, once you decide on your host, it's time to install WordPress and get you up and running. This probably could go without saying, but if you use the one-click installation method most host providers offer, again, I can't recommend this enough. Just follow the directions on the screen. It's extremely easy to do, and if for some reason you run into a problem, you can always open a chat window or call the host customer service phone number, and they can get you up and running. It is by far the best way to install WordPress on a host server, and it might be the only way depending on your host. Saying that, it isn't always easy to find the WordPress installation option on all host provider sites. Most will have a tab or a link to something labeled maybe add-ons, additional software, or optional installations. Typically, this is where you can choose the software you want to add to your little section of the server, including WordPress. If you can't find this area, you'll need to ask your host where to go, or just ask them to install WordPress for you. They all do their own little thing for some reason, don't ask me why, so I can't really help you beyond what I just said. But what I can do is give you a real-life example of one host's methods for installing WordPress. This example is on Bluehost, and it's how you would install WordPress if you didn't do it when you signed up for your plan. It's pretty simple, and I'm going to go through these kind of quickly, so please pause the video if you need a little more time, or you can find the steps in the description below, or, if you're on the blog, in the text below. Alright, ready? Here we go. Number 1. Find the Marketplace button on the left menu. Number 2. Once you are in the Marketplace, scroll down to the heading titled Featured Products. Number 3. Under the heading are tab links called Popular, Themes, Services, etc. Find the one called One-Click Installs and click on it. Number 4. This will take you to the easy one-click installation of the many CMS platforms available to you. Once you're there, scroll down and find WordPress, which is usually the first one, and click Install. 5. This will take you to a new page to, quote, create a new WordPress site. Type in a title and a tagline for your WordPress site and click Next. You can edit the title and tagline later if you want. You can also click on the advanced options if you want to, but that's not covered in this video, and it isn't necessary for a basic WordPress installation. 6. This is when you'll be taken to the final step of installation, and this might be the most difficult if you've never done this before. Trust me though, it only looks scary. This is where you decide what folder you're going to install WordPress in. Here's what you need to know before you decide. The first thing is, the first box is your domain. We didn't cover getting one of those. I'm kind of assuming you've already purchased one, but this is the main address for your site. If you have multiple domains in your account, you'll be able to use the drop-down to select any of the domains you own. For most people though, you'll only have one if you're starting out, so usually there won't be another option. The second box is the directory, and that's the tricky part. Websites run the same way as your file system on your computer does. You have main folders and folders inside folders and so on and so on. You can install anything in any folder you want, but doing this will change how your website works. For instance, let's say you type in a folder named WordPress in this box. WordPress will then be installed inside this folder. What this means is, the only way to use WordPress will be to go to yoururl.com/WordPress. If you go to yoururl.com, it will just be a blank page and will most likely cause you a lot of trouble. My suggestion is to leave the directory field blank so WordPress can be installed on your entire site. The other way is fantastic for advanced users who plan on creating a custom HTML page for their homepage, but isn't the best option for most people. 7. Below the domain and directory form are optional plugins that can be installed right away. You can deselect any or all of these if you want. They aren't necessary to run WordPress, they're just sponsored plugins that a lot of people tend to use on their site. Once you choose what plugins, if any, to install, click on Next. Number 8. From here, WordPress is going to be installed for you, which really isn't a step for you to do, but it's part of the process. It takes a little bit to finish, so be patient. Number 9. After WordPress finishes installing, you'll be sent to a successfully installed page. This is where you'll be given your username, default password, this can be changed later in user settings, the website URL WordPress was installed on, and the address to access the admin area. There's a handy warning at the bottom as well to make sure you copy your password for future access to the site. Without it, you won't be able to get into your site's admin area to create any content, and that would be a bummer. Number 10, and the final step in this process, now is when you select one of the two options at the bottom of the page. The first, go back to My Sites, will take you back to Bluehost. The second, log into WordPress, will take you to the WordPress admin page for your site. And that's it. It looks like a lot of steps, but really it only takes a few minutes and is pretty darn intuitive if you ask me. Thanks for watching. Check out our other video guides and tutorials on our YouTube channel or by going to doggonetech.com/resources. Be kind, like and subscribe.